property over here is basically finished, most of it.
We're talking
In two areas, there's still gravel to be taken off to cut it to that level.
So you're just talking, bringing in, the dozers to move it and then loaders, or are you gonna have other equipment like, that tower that's over there over on Peterson, just past the Peterson exit? Is that ever kind of sped plan? Is that
Structures, will there be?
Oh, well, are you talking the hot plants over there?
Yeah.
Yeah, we won't be bringing in a hot plant here. I mean, we've had a hot plant in here before in this field, when Trappers Loop Road was built. That was a temporary permit for a particular project, and that's a whole other process where you have to come into the county and say, okay, here's a project that would benefit if you put a hot plant here.
I think the other question, part of that is, all right, so how many track hose, front end loaders, like, what kind of equipment could we expect to see in there?
When we have a rock crusher in here, it'd be mostly conveyors. We did have at least 2 loaders with that. We have a 988 size, which is like a 9 cubic yard bucket that feeds the plant. And then usually you have another loader that accompanies it to help stockpile and load truck.
And your conveyor belts, are they equipped with wetting devices, pump water through that way
Yeah.
as the material drops, we're not getting all the extra dust?
Yeah.
all the drop points.
Yeah.
We're monitored a lot on that, and not saying we haven't ever missed something, but we have a lot of people that watch us.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think you guys deal with the eye test more than equipment testing, it sounds like. Like
Opacity.
opacity and that kind of stuff, it's more of what is the opacity at with this dust?
Our people go to smoke school, they call it,
Yeah.
to learn all that, so they know what they're putting out at any given time and that, so they can watch that themselves. But then, like I said, we get monitored by many government agencies.
Yeah, so.
That's, Pat monitors us, he sets up equipment on different sites of ours to monitor to see how we're doing.
Okay, and then how often are you setting up that equipment on sites? I know it's probably whenever you get a complaint, but is there any like
Schedule.
QC or any type of things where you'll go out and just monitor just to be double checking yourself?
Basically, personal monitoring on the employees themselves is done once per year per location. We monitor 3 employees.
Is that just the particulate lapel that they wear?
That's correct. So it's basically a respirable fraction with a silica on there as well.
Okay.
So we do that as a best practice. It's not anything that's required. MSHA, the Mine Safety and Health Administration, also does follow-up sampling where they'll pull their own information. So aside from the opacity, which you mentioned is just an
Calibrating your eyes to.
calibrating eyes, an optical indicator of, hey, are we meeting our air quality permit? On the other side, there's actual personal monitoring that's being done as well.
But that's only once a year?
Once a year per site. Per site.
Now, that's for the personal, but then we do get monitored by, if air quality comes out, if there's any complaints, or they sometimes just come set up monitors.
That was what I was gonna ask, is are there monitors that you bring in, or where are they? Have you got them?
We have some monitors, there's none set up here right now.
We can set something up.
We have some monitors, if we think we're getting close anywhere, we'll bring them out and set them up, and we'll run the data and see what we're doing.
So they're not like they're 24/7 monitoring?
No.
You bring them in and there's not like a government?
Well, no, the government once in a while will too. Pat, how often do they come
And
around?
that's MSHA that has to look at each site at least twice a year. And if they determine there's a potential issue, they will conduct air sampling. They don't conduct air sampling every time they come out, only if they determine there's a potential risk.
They'll come out and put devices on our people and stuff, and then, I guess, read it for full shift, and then take it and run with that.
Pat, what are your results like on the monitoring that happens annually, 3 people per site?
So for the crushing equipment that we brought into here is mobile. It travels to multiple locations throughout the year. Since 2008, we haven't had any issues.
Well, what would constitute an issue? Like, what type of thresholds does it have to exceed before you define it as
There
an
is
issue?
MSHA defaults to the OSHA limits. Basically, it's determined the fraction of respirable dust versus any silica content that's in that dust. And then they do a calculation, they say either you're overexposed or you're underexposed to the silica, and we haven't had any issues.
To date, you haven't had any single employee on any site be
No,
overexposed?
no, we have had overexposures in the past. Basically, we have an overexposure, we'll put some more water on it, additional controls. We resample to verify that that exposure has been controlled, and we go about it.
Would it make sense, or are you required to put monitors around the residential area that you'll be next to? In other words, just outside of your bed?
There's no requirement for that, but in our mind, if the employee that's right there is not being overexposed, he would not be overexposed to the product.
Well, I guess my
but
point
your
would be, we don't know
employees
anything
aren't
about it,
exposed.
the air carrying this stuff, wind, that type of thing. May not be right where the guy's standing, but a higher concentration over by where the houses would be. Again, we're not experts on this, I'm just kind of heard.
Are there airspeed limits? Like, do you not operate if it's over 25 miles per hour or anything like that?
No, actually, if we are over 25 miles an hour and we're doing reasonable control, we don't have to follow the opacity limits anymore. So there's no regulation, there's no regulation that requires that we shut down if it's over
The
25
weather
miles
is
per hour.
stronger. Now, we have shut down before, I mean, if we get some of the microburst type winds that come in and stuff, I mean, understand we deal with South Weaver, every morning we have a 30-mile-an-hour wind for South Weaver. We monitor that a lot, and with the city monitors it a lot. We don't have a lot of issues there. Have we ever exceeded it? Yeah, we've been good for a long time, the South Weaver.
Since 2001, is that when we got our permit, our new expansion? We've had 3 exceedances at South Weaver, and that includes 2 high wind events. One of those was an exceedance without a high wind event.
But we tell our people, I mean, if the wind's that high, I mean, we don't want it, like we're dusting somebody, we've shut down, I mean, but I remember, I don't know how many years ago it was, I mean, we had some winds come through, even out on our facility out in West Ogden. I mean, there was nothing you could do, shut down, the water trucks run crazy, and even in the city streets, they were a mess. But, yeah, when it gets a real terrible high wind, we'll shut the plant down. I mean,
But what's a terrible high wind? I mean, there are aircraft that can take off in 25 miles an hour, so that's perfectly fine. What is your definition of high wind?
I would say, what's the definition of high dust? If it's blowing a lot of dust out of the pit, and we're sitting there running, our guys would be expected to shut down until they can do something about it. A high wind to me is probably over 40 miles an hour, something like that. I mean, I personally shut the crusher down on Antelope Island when we were building the causeway probably 40 years ago, because it was lifting the conveyor belt up the building, throwing the rock on the ground, and I figured, no sense running if I can't get it in the pile. I mean, we train our people to, if we're putting out a lot of dust and stuff, they will shut down and do what's necessary to get it wet, try to control the dust.
How
That's
do we,
part of having trained operators as well, they're trained, our operators are
Our
trained.
people have, we empower them, they shut it down if you
Follow
got
the opacity guidelines and everything, if it's really high winds and you're doing all you can to mitigate. Are your personnel trained? It sounds like you said they were, that, it's not hitting the pile or the opacity's getting high enough, we might as well just stop.
Yeah.
Trained and empowered, the operators at the plant level have the ability to say, enough, we're shutting the plant down, they don't have to call Randy and ask for permission to do that.
So they can make the call
They
right
can make
there.
the
Sure.
call.
Yeah, if they're causing problems, we want them to shut it down.
And I just want to get back to your question a little bit. We talked about concentrations of dust maybe getting worse as it crosses the property line. It actually gets better. The point of highest concentration is where that dust is created. And as that dust moves to the property line, just like gravity, it's like a bullet. The material's going to start falling out. So your concentration is always going to be lower at the property line than it is at the point where the guys are actually working and wearing the samplers, if that makes sense.
does that include the silica, which is
It does.
small enough that, what is it, 1/40th of a strand of hair?
So
You can't even see it?
that depends where the,
Yeah.
I'm not an industrial hygienist, I'm not an expert on that, but it depends how that silica is broken up. I mean, silica makes up the crust of this earth, it's
Right.
everywhere. So it depends how fine you crush that. And there's been numerous studies in-house, there's been numerous studies by the federal government on our other operations to show that we're not grinding that stuff small enough to be a restful fraction. So,
Can we see that? Because I've asked for it multiple times and haven't gotten it
sure, who you asked?
from DAC.
Okay. Yeah, I can point you to a study that federal government did on Brigham City.
No, I want to know
No, we
about
want-
this sand though.
Well, this sand, I don't have one on this deposit right here, but the amount of silica that's in the ground doesn't matter.
It's
It's
the
the
size of the
it's
particle.
the size of the particle, it's how we process that as to whether or not it creates an issue.
However, DAC said at the county planning meeting that this material did not have enough silica in it to be dangerous to health. And we haven't seen any documentation of that. And now you're saying it's the same as every other sand, which we know to be very high in silica, so it depends, like you said, what you do with it. So which of those two is accurate?
Maybe let me clarify that statement I made at the meeting.
Okay?
Silica, if you have 100% silica, it's non-toxic. It's when it becomes a microcrystalline form and it's respirable, that it becomes hazardous to health.
Sure. When it's freshly
So-
fractured, correct?
You can have 100% silica and it's not harmful.
But if you're processing it, it becomes harmful because it's
If
freshly
you're
fractured.
breaking it down.
If you're breaking it down to that size, correct?
The sand and gravel operation is not fractured to that size.
Do you have documentation of that?
I do, we've got air sampling to show that our employees are not being exposed to silica.
Do the employees wear respirators when
They
they
do
work?
not, we don't have any employees with respirators, because we can demonstrate that their exposure level is below that required by a respirator. And then
Okay.
that's been backed up by, federal government. MSHA comes out, does their own sampling, and they can verify that, hey, we're not creating a silica exposure. So the silica that's contained in the deposit isn't as important as what you're doing to that deposit. So if you're grinding it to a super fine level, like, a ball mill or something that we don't process like that. We're not making pharmaceutical grade powders, we make sand and gravel. So we're just crushing it a little bit, we're not making those really fine divisions.
However, the studies that we've seen, which come from other government agencies, discuss gravel mining specifically. I mean, they're not talking about, whatever else. So, and they do cite the health risks that all of the neighbors are concerned about.
What products are they making though, do you know?
What products are they
Yeah.
making?
What are they
Gravel.
manufacturing?
I mean,
Well,
asphalt.
Silica's always been considered that harmful, but the studies do show that when it's harmful is when you ground down that fine. And do you grind some down that fine just in breaking the rock? Probably. That's why the employees are monitored with dust monitors, and there is no ill effects from what we're doing with the material.
The reason I ask what, most of those studies that aren't showing harmful effects are manufacturing sands, like crack sands and different materials like that, where they're very small particles, and that's why, you may see studies done. Is that us?
No. We ran.
So, yeah, frac sand is definitely a different process. And yes, I've seen studies out there that say sand and gravel causes harmful levels of silica. There's also studies that say there's no detectable levels of silica, there's no detectable levels of respirable dust, which exceed the levels of EPA has said is safe.
I haven't seen any of those studies. Now, you guys said that you weren't gonna process a lot. Would you accept a permit that says no processing at all?
No. I mean, depending on what happens, I guess, in Mountain Green and Morgan County, I mean, say if we didn't have any material processed and a job comes up to build, and they did another subdivision plan for right up here or something, they needed some gravel, we'd probably pop one in here and knock out 40 or 50,000 tons for what the needs were for that. I mean, if we had the opportunity to do it.
Do you have any contracts currently for the material there?
Well, yeah, we've got a lot of contracts that this material could
For
be used for.
local?
Right now, well, there's several jobs going on up here, I couldn't tell you right off what they are. I know we've got some guys picking up some gravel right now from the site. Because we sell gravel to all the contractors and everything, so I don't know what else is going up here. I just know it's not very busy, that's why most of it will be taken out of here.
Some of us going to build houses in their own giant subdivision, filling basements with gravel, things like that.
So we look up here for our air quality. The concern I have is the tractors. Is it feasible to ask that you have a 2014 model or newer that has the DEF? And with that,
You know-
will you subcontract that?
Are you sure you want that? I mean, you're having all kinds of problems.
No, I'm in the trucking industry, so.
Well, I got some too, yeah, I know. But
Are you gonna
2014
subcontract
or
as
newer
well?
with the loaders?
Yeah, the loader's probably not, but
Well,
that's not got the trucks.
Well, in the trucks, we've got a lot of our own trucks. I mean, we hire trucks.
That's what I was gonna ask you. You gonna subcontract it then?
Hauling,
We do a
Yeah.
lot of it. I mean, in any given day, we
Which
probably
most of those
have.
guys got a bunch of junk.
Well, we try to hire the best, but I mean, in any given day along the line, that's
You
probably
take Ralph
got
Smith for,
200 trucks leave.
you hire out Ralph Smith, he doesn't have anything newer than 2000, like that. All big bellowers of smoke.
Right. And I'd say we try to use the best ones, but a lot of them would be older than 2014.
Do you require that they have their flaps on so they're not throwing gravel, the ones that come in that aren't your trucks? And then I had a second question about, sorry. I thought I read on the Holly Pit permit that there was supposed to be an interchange. I'm sure you've been hit with that one. Why is that not here?
What is it? Off the freeway?
Cost, but what does
The
it cost
freeway?
to not have it? For
Well, the
residents?
freeway's up to UDOT to interchange off the freeway.
But your permit was hinging on it.
No.
Not
I don't know how they did
Not
that.
exactly.
We had that
Is
permit way beyond that.
My,
The interchange, I think it'd be great if there was an interchange there, but UDOT does not think it's feasible at all because there's not enough traffic. Now, you might disagree with that, I don't know. I think I know it's a pain going one way and you can't get off, you gotta get off Clear Feet or something.
well, no, I'm just thinking the trucks, if they went straight out, instead
That
of
would
all
be-
the way down the
That
whole
would be
road.
nice, it would be,
I remember the
But
road
we-
in front when you were operating.
but,
It was
and
awful.